Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Amber with the Bell Museum. We're excited that you are joining us once again here on Facebook Live. It is time once again for our once a month feature to explore the Minnesota night skies. We'll be talking today with Tad, the planetarium educator, who'll be exploring what we'll see in the month of November. Before we get started, I did want to tell you about some exciting events that are also coming up as part of the planetarium at the Bell Museum. On Friday, November 19th, we will be hosting a virtual star party that will be exploring the new missions to the moon, Artemis. And so you can get the details to register for that program, that virtual star party, online on our website. I'll also be posting them into the comments. And then we're also excited to announce that around the Thanksgiving holiday, the planetarium will be hosting a cosmic film festival. And once again, details for that event and ways to buy tickets are on our website, and I'll also be posting those in the comments. Thank you for joining us once again for this feature on Facebook Live. As always, if you have any questions, we'd love to be able to answer those questions. Simply enter them into the comments on Facebook, and I will share them with Tad, our planetarium educator. For now, I'm going to turn things over to him to get us started.
All right, thank you, Amber. All right, afternoon, morning, evening, hello, whenever you're watching this. As Amber said, my name is Tad. I am the planetarium educator here at the Bell Museum. If you come to the planetarium, you might get a chance to catch one of my shows. You'll also catch a lot of bad jokes, but that's really the best part. Today, though, I'm going to go right ahead and share my screen here as we start exploring our sky. So we are going to be exploring our sky here in November. For those who've tuned in before, you're probably well used to me starting off, in fact, though, by talking about the International Space Station. It's one of my favorite things to talk about and to let people know where to see it in the sky. As it turns out, as we go into the last weeks of October here, as we go into the first week of November, the ISS will be visible in the morning sky. And since I don't like getting up in the morning, for right now, we're just going to jump right into some of the planets. All right, starting off here in November and throughout the month of November, in the evening sky, we'll have 3 different planets visible. Now, I'm using a program called Stellarium here that is showing us the evening sky, and right now it's set to 7:30, and it's right here in the Twin Cities. Now, 7:30 is a good time to go out stargazing. This time of year, it's about an hour-ish after sunset, so you'll get those darker skies. We can also see here in Stellarium, of course, we are also showing the path of the Milky Way. That is this sort of cloudy thing going up and down the sky over here. I don't guarantee you'll see that in the evening sky, at least if you're here inside the cities, but you will definitely see the planets. These are the brightest points of light in our sky, aside from the moon. And the 3 in the evening here are very, very bright. In fact, the brightest one is visible right down to the close to the horizon of the southwest. That's where we have the planet Venus near the constellation of Sagittarius. Venus is here at the beginning of the month in its first quarter or half phase as we look at it. Even with just half of it lit up from our perspective here on Earth, it is incredibly bright, very easy to spot. And it's been easy to spot the last several months. In fact, if you've been watching the sky at all, if you've been driving west as the sun sets, you may have seen this bright point of light appear, and that has possibly been Venus. Of course, if you're here inside the city, it could also be a plane, a helicopter, any sort of things flying overhead. But if it's a strong, steady point of light that appears right after sunset, it doesn't blink or move around like a plane does, probably Venus. Of course, if you are trying to catch a glimpse of Venus while you are driving, please stop your car, pull over to the side of the road. Minneapolis drivers are bad enough as it is. It's a beautiful planet. NASA is sending 2 missions to Venus here in the next decade, the Da Vinci and Veritas lander, or orbiter and lander. So keep your eye on the news there if you're interested in learning more about Venus. Scientists definitely are. Jumping over to the south, though, also bright and easy to see are both Jupiter and Saturn near the constellation of Capricornus. Ooh, we want to bring up just Capricornus here, the sea goat or the mere goat, a rather bizarre kind of constellation. So we'll let it go back to rest there. Jumping over to Jupiter here. Fantastic planet. If any of you joined us for last month's virtual star party, in between the clouds, we had a great view of Jupiter and Saturn as well. Jupiter, though, I think really did it was really magnificent. We had a great view of the 4 Galilean moons when we had our camera turned to them. Today, in the first, we're seeing Europa, Ganymede, Io, and then Callisto. These moons do change positions. If you're looking at Jupiter on the 31st, there's a day difference in movement. Jumping ahead to the 2nd, we can see them moving along. Even over just a few hours, these moons will be in different places around Jupiter. Because of course they are in different places around Jupiter. They're moving, orbiting around Jupiter as at least I talk right now. Getting a little closer to Jupiter itself, if you get it at the right moment, like we will have here in the morning or the evening of the 4th, I hope it's clear skies. With a telescope, you could see the great red spot. So that great reddish orange spot there on Jupiter. This is one of the most famous features on any planet in the entire solar system. It is a massive hurricane. Altogether, it is about the size of, well, give or take about 1.5 Earths looking all the way across here. Those are some very bad drawings of the Earth. Those circles there, they kind of look like weird eyes kind of staring at me. Let's just get rid of those. But it has been present on Jupiter for over 400 years. It's probably going to last for hundreds of years more. So you've got a little bit of time to see it. And astronomers are still a little divided on whether it may disappear or may just grow larger again. Stick around, we'll find out. Also leaving us, though, are the most beautiful objects in the solar system, which are visible again over here to the south at 7:30 throughout November. And that would be the most beautiful thing, would be the rings of Saturn. Another object we were looking at last month at our star party, we'll be looking at it, weather permitting, we'll be looking at it in this upcoming star party. It's just a beautiful sight. Really, all of Saturn is a beautiful sight, but the rings really do stand out nicely. Millions of tiny little pieces of ice orbiting around Saturn. Looking at the planet or around the planet, we don't have the same 4 bright moons that Jupiter has, like at least in a row. There are several ones that are very easy to see, though. We can see them, in fact, brighter on the screen here, from Enceladus to Mimas, Dione, or Tethys. Tethys is, I'm pretty sure, the name I couldn't remember at last month's star party, if any of you go back and watch that recording. Rhea, and then especially Titan, way off to the side here as we see it. It's a moon pretty far away from Saturn, but one of the largest moons in the solar system and covered with this thick, substantial atmosphere. Methane, nitrogen-rich atmosphere that's absorbing blue light there, reflecting some red-orange light to us. An amazing world with liquid hydrocarbons on its surface. So if you catch a glimpse of Titan in a telescope, you're looking at a really bizarre moon in many ways. One we're just beginning to understand with data going back from the Cassini mission. And all of these planets, these 3 planets, I mentioned Venus has 2 missions going to it. All of these planets have been studied in some way and will be studied more in the future. In fact, just Jupiter right over here is right now there's a spacecraft at it called Juno. And Juno has been studying Jupiter for the last, about half decade, or going on about half decade now, actually. It's been quite a while. And it is studying the interior of Jupiter, trying to find out what's going on inside it. There's some new data that's going to be released soon. NASA is having a press conference in just a couple days about some new data coming out from the Juno spacecraft and the models of its atmosphere and interior. So if you want to catch that live, NASA does live stream all of its things going on. It's at NASA. Make sure I wrote that. Oh, I guess we'll put a link in the chat there too, but it is at nasa.gov/NASA live is how to get there. All right. And those are the 3 planets we have in the morning, but they are not the only planets. So, I said, or the evening, excuse me, but they're not the only planets. We do have a few planets visible in the morning. So just for you early risers, let's take a look over. Oh, and I'm sorry, Neptune and Uranus are also both visible as well. Uranus visible over to the east, and Neptune, I'm just going to quickly bring up here, visible a little bit to the southeast near Aquarius. But going to our morning sky, we do have 2 more planets that are visible very early on. And I'm going to bring up my cardinal directions again. There we are. And Arcturus, that's a star. And just checking my notes here, let me make sure we get to the right day and time in particular. Let's see. We're going to see the moon over here. This is the morning of the 2nd. And we are looking, in fact, for the planet Mercury. And I'm just a little too late. We need to go up here, or a little too early, excuse me. We need to go up a little bit later in time. Is about 7 o'clock or so. It's really nice when the labels pop up. I realize you may not have these in your sky when you look outside. That's one reason in particular that the 2nd is a good morning to look for Mercury, excuse me. And that's because we do have the moon here. Now it's at its very last sliver of a crescent, so it's going to be a little difficult to see, but still easier than Mercury. However, if you find the moon and you head sort of straight down to it, or straight down from it to the horizon, you'll find the bright star Spica. Very bright star, one of the brightest stars in the entire sky, really hard to miss. And right nearby Spica is finally elusive Mercury. Despite being a planet, it is still very faint in it because it's very small. But by using the moon and Spica there, hopefully you can track it down yourself. Again, the morning of the 2nd is going to be that morning to do it, because of this nice sort of position of the different celestial objects there. Looking at Mercury through binoculars or a telescope, you're not going to get this level of detail by any means, but it is always cool to spot it in the sky. There was also a few missions at Mercury as well. I believe Bepi Colombo from the European Space Agency is either, well, actually I have to double check the status of it, but I believe it's on its way or very close to Mercury. The morning of the 3rd, the moon is closer to Mercury in the sky. It is at a lesser phase, though. It's at this tiny, tiny last crescent. So if you couldn't get out the 2nd, if it was cloudy, you're up in the morning of the 3rd at 7 o'clock, still go and look for it. Might be just a little bit harder. Spica is definitely still, should definitely still be visible though. And that can be another way to track it down too. We also have a nice triangle there, making it up if you can spot that in the sky. All right. And finally, if we go just a little bit later in the month, Mercury is still there for a couple days. It'll start to set though. As we look forward, I skipped past it. The morning of the 7th, just a reminder, everyone, we fall back here to standard time. We're ending daylight saving time on the 7th. And if that confuses you every year, I'm sorry. I tried to stop it, but nobody listens to me. Going forward to the morning of the 13th, though, we are going to go just a little bit later. The time's changed here. We're going to go back to about 6:30. Mercury is technically in the sky. It's very low to the horizon. It's really starting to appear, though, is the planet Mars. So it comes out from behind the sun into our sky, starting the morning in the mornings here in November, mid-November. For you Mars fans, I know you're out there. Right here too. It's back. It's going to be great to see. Well, it'll be hard to see and then greater to see as it comes in easier and easier view. Very hard to miss as the month goes along. Mars has that nice bright orange view. And where it's been the last few weeks has been almost directly opposite the sun. And it was at its solar opposition. It was at a point in time, in fact, when we couldn't really see it from here on Earth. In fact, NASA couldn't even communicate with it. So there was a brief period of time here, going back a couple weeks now, where we just couldn't communicate with Mars because the sun got in the way. We're out of that position though, and Mars, we're getting more and more of this data back from the red planet, from our rovers there. So I just want to share one image from our rover, from Perseverance, one of the latest selfies from the rover. This is in fact a 2-frame sequence of the rover sort of looking down the ground and then looking right at itself. These are always great to see. We'll have a link to this one as well that we'll put in the chat there too, where you can explore more of what's happening at nasa.gov/Mars. You can explore more of the latest images, the weather reports, the videos. In the Ingenuity helicopter, which is part of the Perseverance mission, just completed its 14th flight as well. 14 flights for a helicopter on Mars. It's an incredible Perseverance and Ingenuity, just making up a dream team there on the red planet. All right, coming back to Stellarium here. I'll actually remove that title bar, which I realize has been up now this entire time. We have, what do we have going on? Well, let's go back to our evening sky and see what else is going on here in the evening sky at 7:30. And mid-month is fine. That's good. We are looking here. Our sky changes throughout the month. Planets move. Our Earth moves around the sun, so our view of things change. I think stopping here around the 13th is a great way to do it, though. You know, our planets give us a good sense of direction in the sky. If you can see them, you're looking somewhere to the south. If you can see the moon, depending on what phase it is, you can pretty easily tell what direction you're facing. For example, when we're right near first quarter, the moon appears near right almost directly south, which is what we're seeing on the night of the 13th. Great night to view the moon. Really beautiful view of it here with the different maria visible, those darker areas and the different craters as well. And we see stellarium is popping up these different constellations that the objects are nearby. And, you know, as we go along here, we've already seen a few different constellations. I pointed out there's Capricornus again. There is Aquarius. Venus was over by Sagittarius, which is sinking below the horizon there. I'll be pointing out a lot of different constellations that we can see in the night sky. But these are the constellations that are ratified or put together by the International Astronomical Union, the IAU. This is a group of astronomers that 100 years ago, they're still around today, but it's a group of astronomers that 100 years ago got together and decided to standardize what they were looking at in the sky. Now, being Western astronomers, they drew upon Western tradition. And so we see constellations that are come to us from the Greeks and Romans, from the Babylonians before them, from French and English astronomers as well. These are not the only interpretations of the night sky, though. They're not the only connections that people have made between stars. And so I want to take a moment to really acknowledge many indigenous groups right here in America and across the world who've seen their own views of the night sky, who put together stars in ways that are important to them, that help them categorize and understand the night sky. If you want to learn more about these indigenous ways of knowing the sky, there's a couple great places to do that. One, if you're right here in Minnesota, is Native Sky Watchers. Native Sky Watchers is put together by Dr. Annette Lee up at St. Cloud University. And she's been a proponent of indigenous knowledge, great proponent of indigenous knowledge for years, and has done incredible work. Dr. Lee has great recordings on her website, going back to past proceedings and future conferences as well going on. As well, if you, especially looking outside Minnesota, this rest of this great world, I'll mention the Indigenous Education Institute. They put on about weekly webinars exploring indigenous knowledge across the world. There's one coming up on the 28th. So if you're watching this before November, there's one coming up October 28th, exploring, you know what, I'm gonna check their website on my other screen to make sure I get this right. It is exploring, well, the title is Living, you know what, why am I doing this? I can just share my screen, right? I don't need to say all these things. Hold on a second here. There we go. So on October 23rd, Living with Stars on the Day of the Dead. So exploring indigenous knowledge from Mexico with Dr. Hawkins and Donna Maria Elvila Vera. I'm sorry, I know I got that name wrong. Feel free to jump in on how to correct me on that one. But the Indigenous Education Institute is a fantastic organization doing just superb work. I've learned a lot from them. I wish I could catch every webinar. Hopefully I'm going to be able to make this one. But I encourage you all to go to it yourselves. All right, coming back to our sky. What's up there? So much. We've got these different constellations, and the bright objects like the planets can help us find constellations. So we sort of work in reverse here. We take, say, for example, Capricornus, or we take Jupiter, excuse me, and we find Deneb el-Jadid, or we go from Saturn, do we find Beta Capricornus, and we can draw the stars connected here. On the other hand, we can also go in reverse. The bright stars of constellations can help us find other objects in the sky. So looking here in the sky, stellarium shows us the brightest stars is just a little bit bigger, which is sort of how they appear in the sky, you know, a little bit brighter. Looking generally here to the south, we can see almost directly to the south, we have a small star. It's called Fomalhaut. It is a star in Pisces Australis. We have just Pisces Australis. That is the southern fish here, or southern fish. Looking nearby the moon there, or coming a little bit over from Fomalhaut, we find the bright star Difta, or Beta Cetus here. Beta Cetus is, trying to leave up just Cetus here. This is one of the brightest stars in Cetus, the sea monster, connected with several other constellations that we'll also find here, as well as the nose or the head, Menkar at the head of Cetus is pretty easy to see. It's a pretty bright star, a little visible more to the east-southeast. So this constellation is pretty large here. All right, coming up from these few stars though, if we come up from Cetus, there's a bright rectangle of stars. And I'm actually going to draw this one out in the sky, or excuse me, rectangle, or really a square here, known as the fall square, the fall rectangle, depending on how picky you get with your geometry. This is a very bright grouping of stars that makes up the brightest part of the constellation of Pegasus. Although this corner star is shared with the constellation of Andromeda. So the fall square makes up both mainly Pegasus, but then you can also track down Andromeda from it as well. All right, but these bright stars, again, they're going to help us find some other objects in the sky. And Pegasus is a great place to start. If you go from the one Markab here, one corner of the square, you come down to this one, what was sort of the head of Pegasus. Although to be honest, I see this kind of as like a squid or an octopus in the sky. So coming off one tentacle of Pegasus, right off the star here at the end, the star Enif, looking with a pair of binoculars or a telescope, you could spot the Pegasus cluster, also known as M15. This is a very bright, very beautiful globular cluster. One of my favorite objects in the sky to look at. To be fair, I have many, many favorite objects. This is a globular cluster, is a collection of hundreds of thousands of stars. In this case, this one's located about 30,000 light years away, give or take. It's visible with binoculars, really good pair of binoculars, and especially though with a small telescope. It'll look kind of like a bright cotton ball of stars in the sky. And it is one globular cluster, one of many that is orbiting around our Milky Way galaxy. There are many others in the sky, there's several hundred, but coming down from Enif here, almost straight down to the horizon, we're looking to the southwest here. We can see marked out M2, Messier 2, which is another beautiful globular cluster. It's got, Stellarium is giving us a little bit of a description there as well. One of the things I love about Stellarium is how much you can learn just from seeing what's there. Noting here a dense central concentration of stars. So where stars have moved inwards towards the center, and giving us a little more concentrated, easier to see view of what's there because it's just a little bit brighter. There are many more globular clusters, again, across the sky. These two, though, are great ones to start with this time of year because they're very easy to find. You find the fall square, you find Pegasus, you come down the nose, and there you go. If you want to track down the fainter ones, by all means, go for it. There are some other bright constellations that'll help you too. But coming along here, we see a lot of deep sky objects marked out. Stellarium just brings them all up for us. And coming back here to the constellation of Andromeda, we see the princess in Greek mythology. It's a very, very easy to find constellation. It's drawn a few different ways, but it's fairly easy to find. Bring down our objects here, because pretty much every star that makes up just this line right here is what we call very bright. It's about magnitude 1, which is on the astronomical scale, pretty bright. And so it stands out even here in the city with light pollution. Finding these 4 stars, the little slight curve they make, going to the leftmost central star, Merak, coming up, we find a few more stars, also very, very bright, that point us right over here to M31, the Andromeda Galaxy. So this time of year, the fall, is when the Andromeda Galaxy is really coming into view. It's a beautiful sight. There's so much amazing about the Andromeda Galaxy. It's the galaxy just currently headed towards the Milky Way on a collision course with us. Keep your eyes out. In about 5 billion years, the fireworks will really get going. But it is also an object that under dark enough skies, if you're well away from city lights, no light pollution, and it's good clear skies and you have good decent eyesight, you can see this with your unaided eye, just your naked eye, no special equipment needed. If you do have binoculars, if you do have a telescope, it is a great view as well. Binoculars especially can be a great way to see it because it is a very large object as it goes. It's about larger, in a sense, it's larger than the size of the full moon in the sky. because of how extended it is, just because it is a galaxy. It's 400 billion stars or more, gas and dust. It's spread over 100,000 light years. And even at 2.5 million light years away, it's very close, and so covers a good chunk of the sky. This is a fantastic object. As you start getting to slightly fainter objects to look for in the sky, this is the one to start with, because, well, it's also, well, it's easy to find and also really beautiful to see. Now, coming nearby Andromeda, we have another bright constellation. I'll bring down those deep sky objects there. Bring that down as well. We have another bright constellation. Again, easy to find, great way to start. Just 5 stars right here that make up the constellation of Cassiopeia. Very vain queen, punished for her vanity by being stuck in the sky. Now, Cassiopeia here, bright W, bright M, depending on what state you're from or what way you tilt your head. Very easy to see. And nearby it, if we come over a little bit, again, just looking for some bright stars here. I'm going to try to, and I should say here, we're looking now more to the northeast. So from Cassiopeia, from the Great Square, we've gone east, northeast, and all the way now to the northeast itself. So we've really moved along here. But coming nearby Cassiopeia, just looking sort of nearby it, coming off the top bit of the, draw some stuff in, coming off the top bit of the throne. If we come just in this sort of general direction, you're just sort of looking around here and you're looking for some different stars. You're probably moving your eyes kind of like I just drew there. Maybe not. You'll find probably 4 bright stars along with a 5th that make up just a nice box and a triangle, square and a triangle. You might imagine this is an upside down house. If you really use your imagination, you can see King Cepheus. Good luck with that one. Cepheus here is a little bit fainter than Cassiopeia, so maybe a little tiny bit more difficult to see, but still well within the realm of seeing it from inside the city. And it's got a ton of different objects nearby it, just like Cassiopeia does as well. Because the great thing about looking for these 2 constellations is that you really narrow down your part of the sky to looking at the part of the path of the Milky Way. So as we look along this faint hazy band, there's a lot more objects, a lot more stars, nebulas, star clusters, a whole lot more to see. One of my favorite objects is actually back in here near Cassiopeia. I'm really excited. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, we'll get this for the next star party. Caroline's Rose Cluster, named after Caroline Herschel, who found it, noted as discovering it. It looks, in fact, if you can sort of imagine, if you can pick out the different stars here, if you can imagine some shapes of rose petals here in the sky. So as the rose petals fall here on Earth, they find themselves back up in the sky there. And it's a beautiful object to see. Fingers crossed for our star party coming up here. Fingers crossed. Now, looking away from the Milky Way galaxy, as we see marked out here, there are fewer deep sky objects because the deep sky objects we really see picked out here are the bright ones. These tend to be dense clusters of stars or some star-forming nebulae. However, there are, as we look outside that main band of the Milky Way, just as many amazing things that are just a little harder and fainter to see. In particular, now we are looking to the north, and it's easy to tell north here in Stellarium because it says N down at the bottom, and that means north. If you're looking in the sky, there's a couple ways to find north, though, if you don't have those red letters. One way that I like to do it this time of year is if I find Cassiopeia here in the sky, I can take that W. I can imagine a straight line coming down one side of it, connecting those 3 stars. And then if I take a right angle from that, drawing a right angle for all you, again, geometry folks there. If you take a right angle from there, you find yourself at that bright star. Now, not the brightest star in the sky by any means, about the 50th brightest, but that bright star is the star Polaris, or the end of the Little Dipper, or Ursa Minor, the smaller bear, which you can maybe imagine that, maybe not. Now, that's how I like to find the Polaris here during, and Polaris is our North Star. It's the star that always points to the north. So if you found it, you found north. And Cassiopeia is the way I like to find it in the fall. And you probably may be more familiar with finding another way by finding the Big Dipper, which we see down here. The Big Dipper, though, is down there. It's near the horizon. So this time of year, the Big Dipper can be harder to see if you're in, especially if you're inside the city. Trees, buildings, all these things get in the way of it. If you have a good clear view of the horizon, though, use the Big Dipper by all means. We know many of us are probably very familiar with doing this. One of the first things we do in the sky, the two stars at the end of the bucket point us directly upwards about 2 hand lengths away to Polaris, again, just like Cassiopeia can do. Winding its way in between these 2 stars is another constellation. This is where we have the constellation of Draco, the dragon, which is one of the simpler constellations in the sky. Imagine a snake with its wings folded in, and there you get a dragon. And in the crook of the neck of Draco is one of my favorite objects in the sky. I think it might be the one we end on today. Maybe we'll point out 2 more things. Coming near the crook of the neck of Draco, I need to make sure that Stellarium is going to show it here. Oh, okay. It's decided not to show it today. Well, then we're just going to search for it. I was a little bit off as well. Okay. Oh, well, there it pops up. Okay. This is where in the crook of the neck of Draco, go with it, people. This is where we find the Cat's Eye Nebula. Now, you will need a telescope to see the Cat's Eye Nebula, but it will appear as kind of a bright blue diamond in the sky. What we're looking at is a planetary nebula, a dead star in the sky. It's absolutely beautiful. It's one of the absolute top 3 objects to look at in the night sky, because we're looking at, well, the death of a star. We're looking at what happens when a small star like our sun reaches the end of its life. So we're looking back in the past, tens of thousands of years ago, and into the future, billions of years. We're looking at one tiny part of this long life cycle of a star. Weather permitting, I'm going to try for this one even on our star party. That's gonna take some good weather though. It is at a good position to see. It's a little high. It's fairly high in the sky, so it does come into view, or it's a little bit easier to get through a telescope. And fingers crossed. All right. Finally, I think the one thing I'll wrap up with here is that we are looking at the fall sky. However, if you've been stargazing all through the summer, you're probably familiar with the summer triangle. And the summer triangle, believe it or not, is still visible for several hours from Vega to Altair to Deneb. We have these familiar constellations and this familiar grouping of stars. So if you're, longing for the days of warmth and sunshine, and you're not like me, or you are like me, excuse me, and you're not a big fan of winter, well, the summer triangle is still there for just a little bit longer. All right. Now there's a lot more going on the sky. We have the Leonids happening throughout the month. We have a partial solar eclipse happening on the morning of the morning of the 19th. So the morning of the 19th, we have a partial solar eclipse. If you want to learn more about that, check out some of the links we're going to put in the chat. But I think I should pause here and see if we have any questions before we wrap up our time today.
Thanks, Tad. No, I haven't seen any questions that came up. If anyone does have any questions, please feel free to add those. We'll continue to monitor this on Facebook and can answer them either in a written form or can answer some questions here live. I did post some links to the upcoming events at the Bell Museum, and I wanted to ask you as an insider, the Cosmic Film Festival that we have coming up, is there anything in particular that you're really excited about or anything you want to highlight?
Yes, I'd love to. We are showing, I want to triple check this and maybe you can just reassure me, but I believe I pushed for it to be on there. We are showing the film Unseen Universe during this, and I'm very excited about this. It covers some of the electromagnetic spectrum. I'm also really excited because it's a film we were going to show about 2 years ago, and then we just couldn't for some crazy reason. So I'm really excited that we now have it in our schedule to show, at least during this and hopefully in the future. It's Unseen Universe. Yeah, I'm very excited about this one. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that insider tip. I haven't seen any questions. So unless you have something else that you want to share, I think we'll wrap up our nighttime sky viewing for this month. We hope that everyone heads outside in the month of November, despite the cold, to be able to look up at the stars and try to observe some of these things, either with binoculars or with their naked eye. We want to thank you once again for joining us on Facebook Live. We are planning to continue this feature through the end of the year. And so if you check out the Bell's website or also our Facebook page, you can find out more about upcoming dates coming up in November and December. All right. Thank you so much for your time today, Tad. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge. I will let you finish it off if there's anything you want to add.
One final thing I'll add, what we're going to view right here in Stellarium for just a minute here. The morning of the 19th, if you love really getting up early, starting around 1 o'clock, we will have this partial lunar eclipse. By partial, I still mean it's like 95% coverage. We won't get that super deep blood red moon that you may have seen before with lunar eclipses, but it's still going to be a really cool sight as the moon moves into the Earth's shadow. It starts at 1, but things take time to go along here. So totality won't be until around 3 o'clock. So if you don't want to get up at 1, you just have to get up at 3. I'm not sure that's better, but if you love lunar eclipses, it's pretty cool. You'll definitely see the moon get very dark. You'll probably see that reddish brown tinge to it, just like we're seeing here. Yeah, it's going to be a cool sight. I can't promise we're going to live stream this one. I'm not sure we're all going to be up at 3 a.m. I'll probably be out looking for it myself. At the very least, check out Stellarium as a way to see it yourself, at least digitally here. There's totality right there at 3. And you've got a good half hour to view that good coverage there as it slowly starts waning. All right, but with that, I think we can indeed wrap it up. So thank you everyone for joining and thank you for watching. If you have more questions, if you're watching this in the future, I hope you have your flying cars and I hope you're putting some questions in the chat there. We'll keep an eye on it to help answer them and have a great rest of your day.